Hey guys, Scriptober here with another video, and very interesting day today on the Twatter as some pretty cool discussions going on. One of them in particular I kind of looked into, and it's an interesting topic, and not everybody agrees, but we can all agree on certain aspects of it. And so Clifton Duncan, writes a lot of articles and stuff, and is fairly well known at this point, he put out this tweet. And he reposted this tweet from Geek League of America, and it got a lot of attention. All of these Star Wars characters and the actresses who portrayed them deserve apologies for how they were treated by the scum of the earth toxic fandom, primarily the YouTube grifters and Twitter chuds. Now, right off the bat, I have a huge problem with that, because this person says all of these Star Wars characters and actresses. Well, sorry, bud, but people are going to say what they want about characters. And they have every right to. These are fictional characters. If you had said all of these Star Wars actresses, yes. Now, at the same time, though, like in the case of Amanda Stenberg, I mean, she's basically was asking for it, right? Going after fans and all this stuff. One of the things that's really important to remember about this whole sort of woke thing, as it's I think going to come to an end here, and this 10 or 15 year era of this nonsense, is that a lot of the people involved, and Amanda Stenberg included, basically said to people, to fans, to us, that if we don't get behind the agenda, that the IP is no longer for us. If you're not for the agenda, then get out of here. Well, we've been a part of this since before you were born, and there was no agenda back in the day. So, like, the assumption is that, right, and this is the other thing, this is very important, before we get into this is very important. The assumption is that prior to this last 10 or 15 year woke ideology thing, that everything that was going on before that was the antithesis to that, was the bigot-spirited entertainment industry. So they had to correct that by going the opposite direction. And that's one of the big problems with this, is because that is an absolute lie. That doesn't exist. People from all walks of life have been involved in the entertainment business forever. Pretty much since the beginning. And all you have to do is do a little bit of research and you'll see that. Since the beginning. But people don't want to do that. They want to focus on, yes, a handful or a bunch of very, very early animations, for example, that portray African Americans in a poor light. Or old theater shows where they would do blackface and things like that. Yes, of course that happened. Nobody's denying that. But that is a small portion. As you start to get into the 30s, 40s, 50s, like it changes completely. And by the time you get to, for example, Star Wars, right? The idea that you have to course correct Star Wars because it was a white bigoted IP, so you got to go the opposite direction now. And say, and if you don't like what we're doing, and if you don't like this woke stuff, then you're a bigot, and we don't want you in the fandom. Why was that necessary? And I go back to, and of course people have been posting this now a lot, because the wokeness is ending, and so people are starting to post things that are helping that along. And one of them is the after Return of the Jedi newscast. I don't remember who it is, ABC or something, where you just had people from all walks of life loving it. And no one even talking about colors of people and racial issues and gender, nothing. Just, that movie was awesome. Nobody cared that, yes, it featured predominantly white people. So, did I ever care if a show featured predominantly black people? No. Did those black people that are being interviewed after watching Return of the Jedi have anything to say about the fact that it was mostly white people? No. Because people didn't think about that crap back then. You guys Disney and all of these companies have set us back decades in terms of how young people are focused on certain things today. Decades. I'm old enough to remember. No one cared. When I went to high school in the 90s, no one cared. No one even discussed it, ever. Literally, ever. The only time it was ever discussed was in jokey ways. Like race would be joked about. And even within their own race, like, they joke about it. Like, my black friends would joke about the fact that every day at least one of them had some fried chicken or whatever. Because it was just, it's fun and silly and stupid. And then for some reason, they decided that this somehow needed this massive course correction, like as if we were still living in, 1750 New Mexico or something. I don't get it. I don't get why they would do that. It's so divisive. It's not going to bring anybody together. Because, see, they only want us brought together as fans under their terms. Which is to think that Hollywood's been a white racist entity for forever. And fans are white racist men. And they don't, if they don't get in line and like our stories that have to do with stuff from Earth, their own agenda, social agenda, rather than just Star Wars, then they're pieces of crap and bigots. See, it has to be on their terms. So they were trying to change the culture, and it's failed. Because even minorities and women, the people that they're apparently catering to, are realizing it's the opposite is happening. They're being dragged through the mud, and that's where we get into this tweet. So, no, you can make fun of the characters if you want. I don't agree with going after the actresses, but even then, you are allowed, as long as it's within, within the lines. Obviously you don't get into, if you want to say Kelly Marie Tran, you're a crappy actress, you're allowed to say that. If you want to say Kelly Marie Tran, you're a dumb chi or something, you know what I mean? Then you're getting into, then now you're crossing the line. But even the actresses, you're allowed to say that they sucked. You are. Of course you are. You're a paying customer. It's no different than being allowed to say that your waiter sucked. You're a paying customer. He sucked. Did a crappy job. You're allowed to say that. So Clifton Duncan. I've not seen anyone else talk about this, so I will. The legacy of the woke era in entertainment has been to sacrifice the careers and reputations of talented women and minorities by placing them in doomed projects that will inevitably draw severe backlash. The diversity of these shows is the main selling point. When the audience rejects the show, they're then accused of hating diversity. See, you have to be part of this. As opposed to wooden dialogue, bland cinematography, lackluster plotting, infidelity to source material, etc. The performers, the most visible aspect of the project, then have to swallow the pain of a poor reception, a tarnished professional brand, and viral memes on YouTube videos trashing their work. Worse, their self-limiting worldview that they live in an oppressive society that loathes them is heavily reinforced, which is a true tragedy. That right there is a fantastic statement, because that is exactly the problem. So once the show fails and they get made fun of, then they can look back and say, see, it's exactly what, the showrunners were telling me it was going to be. It was exactly what Kathleen Kennedy said. And then it reinforces them, and then they do something stupid, like Amanda Stenberg making her dumb music video, which only made it worse. And then it compiled even more, because then fans said, well, you're an idiot. And then, oh, see? So it just reinforced it even again, this false ideology. And people wonder why Hollywood is full of people that seem really dumb and out of touch, oftentimes, with the regular people. Well, it's because they are. They're in a bubble that reinforces this nonsense, these dumb ideas. And so they promote dumb ideas because they don't understand anything else. 99% of actors are hired hands trying to get all they can from a very stressful industry, where the next job is never guaranteed, even if you're at the top of the food chain. There will always be crazies in the fandom. The word fan is short for fanatic. No sane person condones abuse or harassment, and none of these performers deserve that. I agree with that. But I don't think saying that they did a crappy job is harassment. As long as it's objective and you're just making your point. But I agree these artists do deserve apologies. I think some of them do and some of them don't. And we'll get into that. They deserve apologies for being tokenized. I would say John Boyega does in that case, 100%. They deserve apologies for being weaponized against fans. That's a tricky one. That's a tricky one. They deserve apologies for being used as shields against poor executive decisions. But most importantly, they deserve apologies from the bourgeoisie for being reduced to cannon fodder in a culture war. And that's a term he's used in a couple articles going back a year or two, if I'm not mistaken. I guess it's like the bourgeoisie, but in reference to Hollywood or whatever. Blue Bloods, I guess. I don't know exactly, but that's a tricky one. Do they deserve apologies? He's essentially saying they deserve apologies from the studios. To that degree, I would agree with that. I would agree with that. They were used. Now, having said that, again, because they're in their bubble, they get caught up in stuff. Like, let's not forget that many of these people have been in the protests for certain things and part of the sort of woke cultural movement themselves. So to feel bad for them for being part of it in a movie where they're getting paid is a little difficult for me. That doesn't apply to everybody. That applies to a few people. Again, some of them do and some of them don't. So it's a little more complex than that, but his point is quite valid. Quite valid indeed. So let's look at a couple things here. So Marine veteran First Gulf War, he tweeted, "No clue if their careers are over. I doubt it, but the only one I would not want to see ever again is the attractive and vapidly stupid one. I think she was in The Acolyte." Yeah, I would tend to agree with that. And she's part of it. She's part of the whole thing, and she knew exactly what she was doing. That's the one thing with The Acolyte. No one on The Acolyte wasn't, sure of exactly what they were getting into. They all knew exactly what they were getting into. They spent a long time promoting it, using the language and the everything's diversity, and that was the selling point for the show. So that was their decision, the executives, but also the actors knew what they were getting into with that as well. I don't think we can. I think The Acolyte is a bad example. As far as Daisy Ridley, I don't think her career ever would have ended. She's been doing, smaller budget drama for a long time, and I think she would just continue to do that. And as she's getting older, she's getting better. Her acting abilities actually become quite good indeed. Kelly Marie Tran, I do feel bad for her because not only did they kind of tokenize her as like, look, diversity, then they went ahead and basically destroyed her role. Like, she's not even hardly in The Rise of Skywalker at all. And she was asked in an interview how she feels about what they did with her character, like, before it came out. The guy's, like, all excited. He's like, oh, what did they do with your character? Blah, blah, blah. And she's just like, yeah, it's great. Like, she didn't know what to say because they didn't do anything with her. So she's just kind of there in the background. Moses Ingram, I feel kind of bad for her because Reva was just a awful character in every way. And even the fact that they tried to see, in her case, they overdid it. They did the opposite of Kelly Marie Tran. They put her in the show so much that it didn't even feel like the Obi-Wan Kenobi show. It felt like the Reva show a lot of the time. And her character was again, just a terrible character. Just really bad. Really bad character. Looks good, seems serious. I don't remember the actress that played Anastaea's name. But I have no sympathy for her either, because she knew exactly what she was doing. And was on, on the Star Wars Celebration going, oh, diversity, yeah, yeah, and like acting all dumb. She knew exactly what she was getting into. And if they thought in their Hollywood bubble that that was going to lead to something awesome, like pushing that stuff in a Star Wars show, I have no sympathy for them. Sorry. I have no sympathy for them. This guy said, Memorable Virus 2 said, I can forgive Daisy Ridley and Kelly Marie Tran. They got a bad deal. Everyone who joined up with Lucasfilm after the trilogy knew what they were getting into and didn't care. Just look at the way they promote their projects. They're only there for the paycheck. I mean, yeah. And you could make the argument, oh, well, how could they possibly turn it down? It's so hard. If your integrity will not allow you to get involved with that type of stuff, it doesn't matter about the money. It doesn't. So you can say, oh, well, that's the only chance they'll ever get. No, not necessarily. You don't know that. And at the end of the day, if you decide to drop your integrity off at, the store, so you can collect a paycheck and gain your fame or whatever. Well, I mean, I don't know if I'd want to be famous and rich and have no integrity, honestly. I don't think I'd want that. So that's pretty accurate what he's saying there. Okay, and then we got Nice Guy. Nice Guy Sean. He says, I disagree. Producers at any level don't go all in knowing they'll lose their shirts. They believed they could sell it. Actors don't go all in on a sure loser. They thought they'd come out as avant-garde on the right side of history. They gambled poorly repeatedly and continue to. Yeah. I mean, again, it comes down to it. I mean, to a certain degree, I sympathize with the actors, but at the same time, they knew what they were getting into. They did. It's also important to note, I think, too, that it isn't all a minority thing either. I mean, Laura Dern was a pretty big actress before this bad decision. Of course, we all know Carrie was drugged through the mud. Her last film was all about, woman power instead of just a good Star Wars movie. And it's not as if Carrie Fisher doesn't know what she's doing, right? If she's signing up for this. I think that the last tweet I showed is correct. I think a lot of them thought they were going to be coming out on the right side. I really do. And what's really incredible about this whole movement, as far as women go, is women have promoted it, and it's actually really harmful to women. It downgrades them in Hollywood to these characters that are nothing more than propaganda tools. They've promoted the idea that they don't have their own spaces anymore, and they've been the number one proponent of pushing for that. Whether it's sports or whether it's other things, even their own bathrooms. They're the ones that push this. And it's mind-boggling to me. Because they're just causing their own harm. It's really weird. And again, the people out in public, that are getting sucked into this by following these Hollywood women are in a bubble. The things that you are dealing with in your high school or wherever, they don't deal with those things. Their kids don't deal with those things. They are rich people. They live in security-gated communities. They put their kids in private schools that have their own private rules. It doesn't impact them at all. And that's what makes this even worse, is because they're jumping on board on this bandwagon and promoting something that will have no effect on them. None. They'll never know anything about it. People wonder why Why do Hollywood people always want to vote for people that want to raise taxes? Because they don't care. It's a few bucks for them. They don't care. It makes them look nice. It makes them look like they care, right? Even though it doesn't really impact them. It impacts everybody else. Because everybody else has a lot less money than they do. Are the fans a bunch of bigots? Are the fans a bunch of bigots? And this tweet here was very well thought out. Everybody loves Rogue One. I like Rogue One. And I have a couple, a few nitpicks, but I like Rogue One. I think they kind of screwed up the Death Star timeline and stuff because we already had the designs in Attack of the Clones. So this whole thing that we gotta get, he was still working on it. Her dad was still working on it so many years later. It's like, no, they already had the plans. Dooku shows them. So that kind of got overlooked somehow. But I do like the movie overall. As far as Star Wars movies, this is by far the best one that Disney made. And I would rather watch that than probably Attack of the Clones, I'm not going to lie. Or even The Phantom Menace. Main character woman, supporting characters diverse, best Star Wars movie since Episode 3. People prefer it over the mainline sequel series. Oh yes. Then pumped garbage and got mad when we didn't scoop it up. And that's ultimately what it comes down to. No one cares about the skin tones and the thises and the that's. We care about the story. And it's always been that way. Like I was saying back in the 80s, nobody cared that it was predominantly white people. Nobody cares that in Rogue One it's predominantly minorities. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. Nobody cares either way. As long as it's good. It's got to be good. Just can't suck. And so, having said all that, it does appear that we're reaching the end of this nonsense. And I hope it clears the minds of a lot of the young people that have latched onto this as their sort of cause, as their sort of reason for living. Everyone needs to feel like they're needed. And there's a lot of bogus causes right now all over this world that people are latching onto because it makes them feel good and it makes them feel like they're part of something bigger than themselves. In this particular case, it's been a disaster. And people are no longer going to fall in line with it and are no longer going to support it. And people want to go back to the days where people were individuals. And if you acted like an idiot, no matter who you were treated a certain way. And you were rejected. And it didn't matter who you were, what you looked like, what you thought you were, whatever. It doesn't matter. Nobody cared. Nobody cared. Just treat people properly. Have good character. Doesn't mean you have to agree with everybody all the time. I don't agree with a lot of people all the time. But that doesn't mean I go around sticking my finger in their face either. Certain things that I disagree with, I just ignore them. And that's what it comes down to. So I hope all these young people that are fighting this quote cause are now going to wake up, because Hollywood is looking like they're going to stop with this nonsense now. I think Agatha All Alone is probably the last one of these totally ridiculous, diverse things we're going to see. And it's going to go back to good storytelling and then cast whoever. But let's write the story first and then do the casting, instead of let's cast a bunch of people, and then write the story around that. That seems to be what's happening. I'd really like to hear from you guys. What do you guys think in the comment section? Are you sensing that this is coming to an end now? Are you happy about that? Are you a little reluctant? Not really a believer yet, because you've seen how much damage they've done, and it doesn't seem to like they ever want it to end. I understand that too. I fully get that. Now, one last thing. The saddest part about all of this, for a fan, for me, and I'm sure many of you would agree, is that the Star Wars brand now is completely destroyed and tarnished through this process of what they've done. And it's not all the diversity stuff and the woke stuff either. It's bad writing and bad storytelling as well. 100%. The woke stuff has come later with the shows. Even just going back to the sequels, that was just awful. Just awful writing, awful story. Garbage. Garbage. And I don't think it can be recovered now. And after they decided to go from the sequels, which had some woke crap in it with Holdo and all this nonsense, to then saying, well, the strategy now is going to be go full-blown woke, make the show woke first and the story way down the line. Now it's just completely murdered. And lore breaking and all those other things as well. So the question becomes now is Star Wars salvageable as it is? I would say no. I would say the only thing they could possibly do is literally stand up on a podium, get rid of Kathleen Kennedy, she's never going to do this, get rid of everybody in there, Filoni, Fab, get them all out of there. Have a new person come in, stand up on a podium and say, listen, all of that stuff now is going into Legends or going into some other thing. We're going to start again. We're going to do this right. We're sorry that we screwed it up so bad. We're going to start listening to fans and what fans want and stop making our own thing for us personally. And I think if they did that and started over, I think they could pull fans back in, a lot of fans. I think a lot of fans that are gone would be like, you know what? They owned it. And they're going to do it right. Now, what are the odds of that happening? If you like this content, please like and subscribe. Always helps the channel. Feel free to check out anything else on my channel. And you guys have yourselves a really good day.